Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more, powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55% so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Got a car to sell but no time to waste? Hop on to Carvana.com to get a real offer for your car in seconds. All you have to do is enter your license plate, answer a few quick questions, and if you accept the offer, Carvana will pay you as soon as you hand the keys over. They even offer same-day pickup in many cities. Save your time, score some cash, and sell your car the convenient way to Carvana. Pickup times vary. Fees may apply.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potosnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, people often ask, what's the difference between a major holiday, a minor holiday? When do you know which is major, which is minor? And I often say to them, look at alternate side of the street parking. If it's suspended, it's a major holiday. If it's not, it's a minor holiday. We have a major holiday coming up, Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. And with us to discuss the message, the meaning of the New Year is one of our favorite rabbis, David Seth Kirshner, Rabbi of Temple Emanuel in Closter, New Jersey, past president of the New York Board of Rabbis, and author of a book entitled Stream of Shattered Consciousness, a chronicle of the first 50 days of the Israel-Hamas war. Rabbi Kirshner, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. What a great way to get ready for the holidays. Happy, healthy New Year to all your listeners.
Thank you. And Rev, let me tell you, I have been privileged to know 3 generations of the Kirshner family. I knew David's parents. I know David and his wife, Dory. I know the kids. So from generation to generation, it's a wonderful honor. All right, Rabbi, I had a young rabbi call me this past week. He's been in the pulpit about a year. He said, how do I preach to a congregation that is divided when it comes to discussing the Israel-Hamas war? What do I say? I'm new here, 1 year behind me, and it makes me even more nervous. Is there a way to unify the community? What do you advise a person like that?
First of all, I think that there is this verbal Rorschach test. I even spoke about this, I remember, last year, that the shofar is kind of like a Rorschach test. Mm-hmm. That, one person can hear a song and say, that's the song that was playing on the radio when I proposed to my partner. And another person could hear the exact same song and say, that's the song that was playing in the hospital room when they pronounced my parent dead. And they evoke different responses. And, one person can give a sermon and 3 people can hear it very differently. And I'd be quite scared today to be giving a sermon in my congregation for the first time, how that's going to land and what it is that we could talk about. That's a frightening thing today, because I feel like not only are we so divided, but it's so charged. And if we say something that doesn't land right for someone else, boy, they might just get up in a huff and puff and walk away, and I don't think that's a good or healthy thing to do. So I would tell your listeners who are part of the congregation, cut your rabbis a little bit of slack, that if they're trying hard to do their job, they're going to try and offer some balance. That's number one. And number 2 is part of the role of any pastor, any minister, any rabbi is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comforted. And our job is to get people out of their comfort zone a little bit, to push them a little bit, to prod them. And if we hear something that doesn't land right, maybe we need to do a good look at ourselves as why that sounds so uncomfortable for us today. Mm.
Well, Rabbi, you comforted me because I thought I was the only one who my congregation quoted for saying things that I don't remember saying in a sermon. So I guess it works out that way, That's right. But let me ask you a question as we talk about ministering and speaking to people. We preach or we sermonize, homily, whatever we want to call it, but we speak to the social mind. influenced and shaped by so many influences, political, social, moral, pop culture, trends, and they all expect to have us connect in some way to them. Speak of the difficulty involved in doing that.
I'm gonna be rabbinic for a minute, Reverend. I'm gonna answer your question with a story. It's a story that I imagined happening about a decade ago, where 3 generations of a family were sitting at a holiday table, a set of 85-year-old, very with it, very lucid grandparents, their 50-year-old children, and their 20-year-old grandchildren. And they're sitting at the table, and the grandparents say to the children and the grandchildren, we have decided to leave $1 million bequest to the Anti-Defamation League. And the grandchildren say, that is beautiful. What is the Anti-Defamation League? So I tell you that story because we could be sitting in the synagogue in multi-generations, and it's going to be incumbent upon us to realize that the existential fears of the octogenarian praying about the future of our religion, and I don't think it's limited to Judaism, but that's the topic of the holiday for this week, and the 50-year-old who is balancing that sandwich generation, and the 20-year-old who is dealing with their challenges are seeing it from a radically different perspective, all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, they're sitting shoulder to shoulder in the congregation, and they're breaking bread together, and they're part of the same family, and they share love. And one sentence could land very differently. One thought, one image could land very differently for all 3 of them. I think that's one of the real challenges of anyone preaching today is how do we connect and find those common denominators with all of those different demographics and people who have different triggers and passions.
Yeah, but even if we don't find the common denominator, I think it's incumbent upon us to create that what we call sacred space where you have the right to interpret things differently. The rabbi has the same right, and we don't have to in any way diminish the character of the other, the intelligence or the integrity of the other. You know, we talk about all the political assassinations. We don't have to have verbal assassination because someone disagrees. And I think that's something we need to do as faith leaders, to have people realize it's okay to differ. It's okay to have a totally contradictory point of view. It doesn't mean you have to walk out. It doesn't mean you have to boycott. What it means is you got to listen and say, all right, that's different than what I'm thinking. Now, maybe there is some common ground, maybe there isn't, but we're all connected to one people.
But don't we have to teach them how to do that? They're not going to do that naturally.
Right.
It tends to be confirmation bias. You know what I mean? I'm waiting to hear you say something that confirms how I feel, my opinion, my position, especially in the social political climate that we've been in our nation. Rabbi?
I think you're both right. I think we have to say it in word and act on it in deed. And what I think we need more of is people who can be part of a conversation where at the end we can invoke Voltaire, who said, I disagree with everything you say, but will fight for till my dying day for your right to say it. Where we can get up and say, boy, we have radically different views on Israel. We have radically different views on this government. We have radically different views on immigration, on when a child's life begins. But boy, do I love you for being created in God's image, and I want to hug you. And I think it is important, Reverend, for people to see that hug between people who have 2 different views. And I think it's important, Rabbi, for people to hear those differences, to articulate it, but also hear that love. And what I think has happened is we have gotten so passionate in our causes that it has made us blind and deaf.
You know, I've said to rabbis, Rev, over the years, if you look at the Jewish star, you have 2 triangles going in opposite directions. That may be a fitting symbol of the Jewish people, opposing, ideas, but yet those 2 triangles are on the same flag. I'm getting a message from the producer.
Go to a break.
Kevin Drosh is, threatening me. So we're going to come back with more.
We'll come back to it. You got it.
We're coming back with more of the Rev and the Rabbis.
And the Rabbis, that's right. Stay tuned.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joe Spatasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
All right. David Seth Kirshner, Rabbi of Temple Emmanuel, Closter, New Jersey, past president of the New York Board of Rabbis, author of a wonderful book. I'm privileged to have a copy of it, autographed. Streams of Shattered Consciousness, a chronicle of the first 50 days of the Israel-Hamas war. How do you put on a different set of glasses and see it see what somebody else sees, rather than looking at it through your own lens?
You know, one of my rabbis on issues related to Zionism is a fantastic gentleman by the name of Tal Becker. Mm-hmm. And what Tal taught me was that he's in charge of creating peace. As he says, he's failed in that endeavor. Mm-hmm. He says that when you are working on a peace agreement between any two conflicting parts, the most important thing you can do is write the speech of the opposing nation. So to come back to what I was talking about before the break is, if I were a good spouse, I would write the love letter, of the opposing spouse, of the opposing. What does that look like? How can that be seen with a lens of empathy, compassion, understanding, appreciation? We have dug our heels in as a society. We are so dogmatic. We are convinced that for us to be right, you must be wrong. And it's become wildly dangerous.
And it's unfortunate because empathy is what makes us human. And we're suffering from a deficiency of empathy. If I cannot put myself in your shoes and understand the best that I can your experience, then we begin to walk away from our humanity, what joins us together as individuals. Let me ask you this question, and to the two of you, all right? Because when the individuals come, our congregants come, visitors, whatever come, we, from the Torah or from our Christian scriptures, we have to help them make sense of current events. Those things that seem so horrific. You did that with a book in response to October 7th of last year. And now we have a nation divided even deeper than we were before the assassination of Charlie Kirk. How do we go about those differences of opinion and making sense of these events in light of Torah, in light of our scriptures?
Well, I would just... go ahead, Rabbi.
Yeah, go ahead, Rabbi. No, Rabbi Spatasnik, you're much wiser than I'll ever be.
See, there's an opinion I wouldn't disagree with. So, if you look back at contemporaries of Jesus, Hillel and Shammai, they had, from my recollection, 310 disagreements. And Hillel was favored most of the time. Shammai rarely won an argument. But yet, as something Rabbi Kirshner said before, Hillel would quote Shammai first and then give his own point of view. And I think if you do look at our tradition and all the commentaries, you would find strong support for different views. The tefillin, the phylacteries that we wear on the head have different compartments. The tefillin that we wear on the arm, only one compartment, because when it comes to doing, we have to stand together very often. But when it comes to thinking, we can be on different pages or different books. So there is this, foundational point of view that there are different views. Rabbi?
I would agree with every syllable of what you said, Rabbi. I would only dovetail it by saying, Reverend, that in my estimation, one of the critical ingredients for self-growth is creating vulnerability. And sadly, we think that by being vulnerable, we're weak, or by being vulnerable, we will be proven wrong. And I see it differently. I spoke about this recently, and I'm going to share something on the holidays in my community about it, but there's this very powerful scene in the series of The Pit where this doctor who has this almost godlike role where he tries to save people, and sometimes he's successful, sometimes he's not. He has this moment of vulnerability, and he can't be seen by his fellow doctors when he has it. He can't let them see him cry. He can't let them see him weak. And I think that it's an honest part of the show. I think it reflects reality. But what I hope for, the aspirational side of me, is that my community can see my mistakes. They can see my weakness. They can see my angst, my worry, my frustrations, my failures. If they can see my brokenness, well, then they see my imperfection, and through that, I think is our greatest opportunity for growth. But if we only present the perfect, the pristine, the unbroken, the polished, well, how can we ever find fault with anything and any other if everything we present has that glossy look?
Can I inject one quick thought? Do you remember Ed Muskie, Rev, years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Vice presidential candidate. Do you
Years
remember
ago,
when he
sure.
cried publicly? And there were those who began attack. How can this man serve as the vice president? Right? He's crying. He's tearing up publicly. And then there are others who said, that's the kind of person you want who tears up. It's the kind of person I just saw the Chancellor of Germany was crying when he spoke about the hatred of Jews during the Holocaust. He started crying. And you say, that's a leader who can show emotion, who can show what some people perceive as weakness. Rev?
Yeah, and then again, how do we understand strength versus weakness in our society? We don't agree on what it means for a leader to be strong. We have a text that says that our strengths are made perfect. God's strength is made perfect in our weakness, because we have to realize that without strength that's beyond our own, all right, we can't make it. We cannot deal with certain issues and circumstances. What's the profile? How do we measure true strength? What does true strength look like?
For me, true strength is about being broken. It's about imperfection. That's what strength is, because it makes us real, at least in the human component. We're not talking about building a car. We're not talking about creating a house. And I think Judaism reminds us that when we take the broken tablets that Moses threw down and upset, and we put them inside the tabernacle and they go with us, it's a reminder that we are far from perfect, that we're always carrying around our brokenness. I only wish that we would highlight it more, that it wouldn't be closed in a closet, that it would be available for all to see, because I think that's where the greatest opportunity comes. Boy, if we put online, if we shared with the world, I'm having a terrible day, I'm feeling depressed today, I'm feeling sad today, I'm feeling frustrated today, and not just a rant, kind of where we are, most people wouldn't know how to respond to that. But I think if we could stop creating a facade of perfection and openness about what are our warts and our challenges, each individual kryptonite, ironically, I think that leads to our organic health and strength.
That's the brilliance of the Torah. All of the characters of the Torah are imperfect. We don't have any perfect person in our Bible. No matter who you take, you always recognize this person did some things that were wrong. This person was not 100% perfect, and yet this person was a hero.
And the Torah doesn't shy away from pointing out their imperfections, whether it was the uncircumcised, stuttering lips of Moses or the lack of empathy that Abraham doesn't show to Isaac or doesn't show to Hagar and Ishmael. These imperfections are what make them human and real and connected. And that, I agree with you, is the genius of the Torah.
Rabbi, we come to the end of the segment. As always, we enjoy listening to you, learning from you. Your congregation is very privileged to have you as the spiritual leader. I know you feel very privileged to have them as your congregants, but I've been there.
I tell them every week how privileged they are.
I've traveled with you, and I have to say, as I said at the opening, having known your parents, I can really say that the branches are as strong as the roots. So thank you, and thank you for the friendship. I really have enjoyed. I value our relationship. that we've had over the years and look forward to many more years of it. David Seth Kirsch.
Well, the feelings are
Thank
mutual.
you so much.
May God bless you all, and may you have a happy, healthy, sweet New Year.
Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, my friend. Stay tuned for more of The Rev and the Rabbi. We'll be right back, right here on Red Apple Radio Network.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potosnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, you know what's interesting with the high holy days, besides your guaranteed good weather? Anybody planning to go away, if you're not Jewish, you're going on vacation, go during the Jewish holidays. You're guaranteed good weather. It's an opportunity to really further deepen the understanding and the relationship you have with your congregation. And I think if I were a younger rabbi starting today, I'd have to preface my sermon with saying, I know some people are going to be uncomfortable, but that's a healthy thing in today's world, because you need a place where you can feel uncomfortable and still be part of the conversation. And I would welcome people to come and have a conversation with me, to share their feeling rather than storming out. I think we're losing those opportunities.
So I know you celebrate it as a religious New Year.
Yeah.
But do you celebrate it similarly to how we celebrate the secular New Year, by thinking about changes that you're going to make in your life, letting go of things from the past and not taking it into the new year? Do you go through that?
So I'm thinking there is I was listening to a Jewish comedian. And he says, look how the non-Jews celebrate the New Year. Look how the Jews celebrate the New Year. The non-Jews are making noise. They're happy. They're celebrating, dancing. We're solemn. We come into synagogue. We say, we're sorry for the wrongs we committed. It's a more introspective time, more solemnity. But you can't begin a new year just by celebrating. You have to begin a new year by saying, how am I going to improve my own behavior? How am I going to improve my relationship with my neighbors, my family? So for us, it's a time to really challenge yourself, because we often say a happy new year. That's the wrong translation of Shana Tova. It doesn't mean a happy new year. It means a good new year, a year in which we see goodness. We need to see how can we exhibit more goodness in our relationship with one another. That's what Rosh Hashanah is. You can party later, but first, look at yourself.
But it's like the New Year's resolutions, where you're reflecting on your life, where you are, where you'd like to be, looking ahead, and of course remembering this time the year previously where you did the same thing, and saying how much of what I resolved actually came to pass, right?
Someone said that the smartest person he ever met was his tailor, because every time he would come in with a suit or with whatever he brought in, the tailor would measure him and say, let's see how different than you are from last time. Let's check the measurements against last time. This was your waist. Now your waist is this. So it's idea of looking back, where were we and where are we? And by the way, one of the things that we didn't have a chance to talk about is during what's called Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, you begin the service by walking around the synagogue and apologizing to people and saying, I did something wrong. I'm sorry. Whatever I did that offended you, that hurt you, I am sorry. Even if you didn't do anything that hurt the person, you got to learn to say, I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about this during the break.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do with irreconcilable differences?
That's a basis for a divorce. Don't you always hear they getting divorced because of irreconcilable.
I mean, there are times when you can't. Yeah, you can't come together on something. So, is that the end of the relationship, or
so? I ask you, if we could move ahead to Passover, and you look at the Passover narrative. You have kids there who are antithetical in thinking to one another. You have the wise, the wicked, the simple, the evil. and they're all sitting at the same table, and they're all asking questions. I mean, don't you have sometimes irreconcilable differences within a family, and you don't break it apart? You try to keep it together. You recognize we're not going to agree on this, but we're not going to allow this disagreement to destroy what we have, because there are other things we do agree on. We both love our family. We love one another. And I think love means you have a responsibility to repair where you can, or just recognize that it can't be repaired. It's irreconcilable, but there's a lot more there to keep us connected to each other.
And I think that's important, that we can continue to live a relationship even if there are points where we just don't agree. You know, I will tell you, my wife and I are celebrating our 53rd wedding anniversary this year, and there are still places where we just don't agree. And she'll say to me, you know, look, you and I don't see eye to eye on this, so we'll just leave it here for now. And I'll say, I agree with that one. Yeah. And, but, you know.
Yeah, but you also have recognized in your marriage that it's like your wife is the court of highest jurisdiction. Her ruling stands. You're in the minority, she's the majority, and that's it. It's over. But you learn to live with it, and after a while, you'll even learn to love it, because you recognize we're created in the image of God, but there are differences in that act of creation, and the ability to think is part of that act of creation. And I don't have to be a carbon copy of you, nor you of me. So,
that's a good point, because she'll say to my kids, and she said it when they were young, and even now that they're older, say, well, your dad and I don't agree on this one, so let's keep moving, and it's just accepted and somewhat celebrated that we can continue in spite of our differences, and I think that's the way it should be. Yes,
53 years is a great statement of willing to recognize difference and keep it whole.
Yeah.
Right?
True that.
You've done it. We have a tradition on Rosh Hashanah where we cast away our sins. We go to the water and we take breadcrumbs and we throw the breadcrumbs into the sea. And we say, these are my sins I've wronged. Now, some people need a real huge bag of the breadcrumbs for all their sins. Though symbolically, we take a few, because it comes from Micah. We say, Micha, cast your sins into the water. And that's what we do. We go down to a body of water, and throw away these breadcrumbs and say, I have wronged. I've wronged you. I've wronged others. I am not perfect. And I just think that's countercultural today, because we live in a society, as was said in our segment with Rabbi Kirshner. It's each person thinks he or she is 100% right, and that means the other person is 100% wrong if they disagree.
That's interesting, because we have a text in Ecclesiastes that says, cast your bread upon the water, and not many days hence it will return to you buttered. I added the buttered part. Yeah. But it's interesting, and it's the whole idea of life making full circle. Things coming back around, and that's why you want to deal with them properly in the first place. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Casting your sins upon the water.
You know what's nice? Here we have a discussion about the Jewish holy days. And you're able to take your Christian traditions and see, well, wait a minute, that resembles something we say or we do. There's a common message here. And I think one of the things we don't do enough of is to show how we're different, but also how we're similar. And I think it'd be wonderful, if there were some compilation of traditions that reflect one another or different from one another, so you could see that we're not echo chambers of the other. We are proud of who we are, but we're also proud to acknowledge that others have beautiful traditions, and we can all walk together to our different houses of worship. We can walk on the same path, and then eventually we go through different doors.
And I think it's important that we don't have to invalidate someone else's opinion or belief just because we don't agree with them, or just because they hold a different set of beliefs. We tend to immediately invalidate them, which means we're validating ourselves over someone else. And you're right. We have to be able to say, okay, I understand, and you have the right to your opinion, to your set of beliefs, to your practices, and I shouldn't feel threatened by them. I should appreciate that you have that right.
Everybody points to the verse, love your neighbor as yourself. That's fundamental to our respective traditions. What they don't point to is the sentence also is there, juxtaposed with that, rebuke your neighbor. Love your neighbor, rebuke your neighbor. Both sentences coexist. You can love and you can rebuke. You can agree and you can disagree. But nowhere does it say you destroy someone because you disagree. And unfortunately today, this mentality is, how dare you disagree with what I'm thinking? How dare you have a different point of view? And that's shameful.
Yep, I agree. I've got something. I don't know.
We're going to come back. We're going to come back.
Time.
Yeah, we got one more segment to do.
One more segment.
All right.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, I know you got a host of questions to ask.
Of course.
But you have something you said you wanted to say. All right.
Okay. Well, look, and look, thank you, our listeners, for sending in your emails whenever there's something that we may say that, you want clarification on or whatever. So in conversation, and I think it was with our guest Jasser, remember, he is running for Congress in Arizona.
Dr. Zuni Jasser.
And I was talking about statements that Charlie Kirk made and asking him, well, how do you respond to these things? And I made a statement that Charlie Kirk said that gays are to be shot. Number one, he didn't actually say shot. What he did was refer to a text. It was on the June 8th, 2024 episode of the Charlie Kirk Show. And he quoted from Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13, the Old Testament verse, Old Testament Hebrew scripture verse, that prescribes death for male same-sex intercourse. And it describes it as God's perfect law. And this is what Charlie Kirk said. This is God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters, and therefore it should guide us. So he, in essence, the use of that, citing and endorsing that text, advocated stoning of gays. And my point was that, whether you use it as a text to bring it forward into today's world, it's still violence in terms of how we respond to, issues within our society. So I apologize for using the word shot, or even stone, but it doesn't change the fact that Kirk did refer to this particular text in Leviticus, which called for capital punishment for same-sex relationships.
Yeah.
Now, I'm very clear in terms of my faith position on these things, and we share that. But, look, I stand corrected on that one particular item there. So, 1,000 apologies.
Yeah. So, and I said to you when you mentioned to me during the week that whether shot or stone, the end result is the same. But I think all the more reason why when people study texts, they have to study commentaries on texts. The Talmud does much to explain that capital punishment was something that was used sparingly, and there were all kinds of conditions that were imposed in court rulings before you could pronounce someone guilty that way. There were many conditions. You had to warn the person. There had to be witnesses. The whole list. So difficult was it to impose capital punishment that the Talmud said a court that would kill someone through capital punishment once every 7 years was a bloodthirsty court. Another source says, wait a minute, not one in 7, 1 in 70. So you should know that even though the text was pretty harsh, the commentary, the Talmud, was much more, should we say, understanding of the totality of circumstances, so that you didn't arrive at that conclusion immediately. You didn't arrive at capital punishment by just reading the text. It's like we often talk about an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That doesn't mean, you can interpret that and say, I can remove your eye because you took out mine. That's not what it means. And yet it's been interpreted that way. And
that's the thing, Rabbi. It's being interpreted that way. Right. And a lot of the conflict that we see is because of how individuals are interpreting the text. Mm-hmm. And we call it hermeneutics, right? Exactly. There are principles of hermeneutics, principles that govern interpretation, beginning with context and language and audience and a host of other things. And if you don't go through that process and you just take it literally and extract it, okay, I was going to say you can do violence to the text, but you can, and then misapply it in ways that become dangerous. Even asking the question whether the text applies today as it did when it was given to the nation of Israel as part of, the moral law. And I'm not speaking specifically about this text in Leviticus, but just in general, which do we bring forward, and which is specific to the context and the audience of the time. There's a lot more that goes into it.
Whenever someone says to me, did you hear what so-and-so said? I said, well, first tell me, what did someone allegedly say? What was the context of what was said? Right?
Context.
That word is missing in today's discussion. And that's why we spoke of Paul Harvey. Now you know the rest of the story. We don't bother to find out the rest of the story. It's what we hear immediately, and there's no further discussion. I mentioned something to you during the break, which I think is a fascinating discussion, and I credit David Seth Kirshner for this. He said to me that incident where a woman snatches the baseball from a young boy at a game, was a Phillies Nationals game, I believe, right? Yeah. And everybody saw it. Here she's taking this kid. It was this ball, and the ball player gave another ball later on. And someone asked this question. So the ball that she took, it was wrong. But what was the context? Maybe she had a kid who was deathly ill, suffering greatly, and the ball would mean a lot. I don't know. But she was condemned, but we never found out the rest of the story. We never learned why did she do it. Now, maybe there was no rest of the story, but we don't even bother to ask the question.
Well, that brings us to another question. Suppose she did have the rest of the story. Suppose it was a situation and she felt justified in doing what she did. Does it make it right? How do we judge whether she was right or wrong? I mean, she was already judged by the public.
Yeah.
Take it from a little kid. That's not fair. You're grown. You're an adult. You should treat yourself differently. Is it right?
Well,
just because of circumstances that we are going through, and are we imposing that?
Don't we often ask? Someone steals a loaf of bread, runs out of the store, then we find out the person took the bread because his family is hungry. They're poor. They just can't afford it. Does that change the circumstance at all? I think it does. I think it's wrong, but we understand it. It's that kind of thing. It's wrong, but maybe we would have done the same thing. So again, context, nuance, more details. We need them desperately. That's why social media is so dangerous, because everything is on TikTok and, the 20-second soundbite, and that's all you hear, and you don't know anything else. We can be better. And that's what the Jewish New Year says. You can be better.
Yeah, and there's an oversimplification. You and I were talking, and I mentioned to you the text, love your neighbor as yourself. You can tell that to a young child, and, they will hear it and say, oh, okay. But the text itself is, and let me use the language, deceptively simple, because it involves so much more than simply doing that. It involves your psychological state. It involves your sense of morality. It involves where you are emotionally. The whole idea of loving your neighbor as yourself begins with understanding, well, what's your relationship with yourself? Because if you're broken, if you're wounded, you understand what I'm saying? And I don't want you to love me out of that brokenness and that woundedness or that anger.
But you turn that around. Love your neighbor because he or she, kamocha, is like you. You're broken, so is that person broken. You're hurting, so is that person hurting. Not, we misinterpret it. Like you means you think that person is just a reflection of me. No. Reflection of me in the sense has some of the negative qualities that I have. But Rev, we've now been told by Kevin Drosh that we've come to the end of the program.
Can't be. We're just getting into this.
So let me tell you, as one who loves you very much and respects you for all that you are and do, we pray for you a happy, healthy new year, because if you pray for only your own people, your prayers are incomplete. So we include you and all of the people who generally want to live together in peace, wishing them a better year for all.
Amen to that. And thank you again for tuning in to the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks. Till next time, you want to close in Hebrew, Rabbi?
Shana Tova Metuka means a happy year, or actually a good year. Let me quote it correctly, and a sweet year. That's why we put honey on whatever we eat at the beginning of the meal. Put a little honey on it. Make it symbolically sweeter.
I like that. Make life a little sweeter. Till next time, God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Rev and the Rabbi. You can hear the Rev and the Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?